Never give in. Never give in. Never, 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 never.
You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay. There is a point beyond which they must not advance.
Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, for they might not choose socialism.
We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore.
Conservative One.
With George Christensen.
G'day, I'm George Christensen, host of Conservative One, the podcast defending traditions and freedom. And I've got a great guest today, someone who has been a very strong defender of tradition and freedom in this country. It is the woman formerly known, I guess, as political Posting Mumma, Marijke Rancie. How are you, Marijke?
I'm very well, thanks, George.
You're broadcasting to us from lovely Melbourne at the moment, where things are a little bit askew, as we're seeing in the media. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of really what we're here to talk about, can you just tell us how's things in Melbourne right now?
I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, to be honest. It was nice to actually be able to kind of get dressed up for this, because I've been in my sweats since about March, I think, like probably most of us. There's been some advantages. I'm someone who likes to look at the silver lining, and the fact that we're all everything's kind of reset and slowed down, and I've spent a lot of time with my family, and that's been lovely. But it's an incredibly stressful situation for many, for lots of different reasons, and there's a lot of anxiety out there at the moment. So it can't be denied. It's crazy.
I can imagine, and from what I'm seeing, I mean, I understand in a pandemic, public health is paramount, but I'm very concerned about the kind of things that I'm seeing emanating out of Victoria at the moment in terms of the heavy-handedness of the law. Even, Pauline Hanson might have supported that lockdown of those towers, but I think the day that we see people being locked in their own homes by authorities, something is really, really wrong. So anyway, that's all I'll say on that. Yeah. Unless you've got something to add.
Oh, look, I've got a big mouth, and there's a whole lot of us out there who are, have quite strong opinions. It's just a matter of making sure that, there's always a balance between keeping people safe and too much tyranny, at the end of the day. We call it lockdown. There's lots of phrases, but, you feel like you're under house arrest. And I just hope that, that Australians aren't too ready to hand over their freedoms, and like I said, we're happy to, we're a compliant lot, and we're happy to protect people and do our bit, and you can see that by the reaction in the community. But I just that's my concern. There's always a balance, and I'm a freedom fighter at the end of the day. That's what got me here. So well,
that's what we're here to talk about, defending traditions and freedom. And you have been a very big defender of traditions and freedom in the past, and you're stepping up to the challenge again, I see. But many people will not know you as Marijke. They'll know you as political Posting Mumma. And what spurred, the average suburban mum to become so politically active, taking up the mantle on social media to try and fight back in what's colloquially known as the culture wars?
Yeah. Look, I call myself an accidental activist. I guess a lot of people fall into that category. But for me, ultimately, I was your typical Australian mum. I actually grew up on the polar opposite side of politics and had quite a social justice warrior background. And, if you talk left and right, very much that way of thinking. And I was someone who got my information from the TV, raising my kids, and you turn on the news and whether it be the ABC or places like The Project, and I'd get my information from there most of the time. And And, as far as I was concerned, that was fact. So that was me a few years ago. And I guess I was someone who I really had my head buried in the sand. And I think what I've experienced is that frog in boiling water. So for me, I felt very, very challenged and confronted. I am someone who, have become a conservative later in life, and especially as I've raised my children, I do believe in conserving institutions. I believe that families, the absolute key to, the backbone of society. And if you can fix what happens in the home, generally you'll, send out people who are healthy and well and able to contribute. And so for me, it was an attack on my family. And I was absolutely shocked when my kids came home from school and informed me what was going on. So much so, I didn't really believe it. And so
could I jump in there, Marijke,
Sure.
and just say that's a big thing to be a political convert, to go from someone who may have nominally been sort of on the left, I guess, or to being a conservative who would be classified as a culture warrior or a cultural warrioress. Was it the children? Was it your children being exposed to things in school that led to that complete turnaround, or was there something else going on?
Perhaps I didn't realise that I was a conservative for a long time. I didn't really think about many of the issues. I just got on with, day-to-day life and the stresses of raising a family and the joys, I guess. But, for me, I just assumed that those that were governing were doing the right thing, and that when I was sending my children to school, they were getting a good education. And for the most part, I hadn't had any concerns. So for me, it was certainly the attack of the so-called Safe Schools program, where I just went down that path. But, I guess I had a bit of a conversion experience when I was 20. So having come from a, very different background, I was probably already developing those conservative views, but I just didn't really know where I sat politically, I guess.
Yeah. So people later tried to claim that you were not some organic suburban mother, that you were in fact hardcore and political. They pointed to the fact that you were a member of the Liberal Party, but all of that seemed to have come after this, after you got involved. Talk us through that and set the record straight on these claims.
Yeah, I'd love to. So my frustration with the program, the first step I did was to go straight to the school, and it became very, very apparent after I'd read the curriculum, and I was actually shocked that it was even in the school. I spoke to the principal, and I tried to kind of work out what was going on, and it became very apparent that even the principals of my kids were at a couple of different schools, but they actually felt quite powerless, and they said, this comes from the top. The Department of Education tells us what we do. And
schools here, right?
Yeah. And just a lot of the programs, really, they've lost their, that's changed within the schools, where principals don't have, the same authority over their schools. And so I thought, okay, well, if it's political, I need to kind of tackle this politically. And I was invited to, because there was a lot of rumbling going on here in Victoria, I was invited to an event where there was a federal member of parliament, and I had never met a member of parliament before. And even at that time, I was like, I don't know where I sit. But as the values were presented to me, they spoke to me in terms of freedom, and ultimately I realised that freedom was at the heart of this entire battle, because at the end of the day, we should all be free to raise our children with the values we want and educate them with the values and the education that we would like, and not have that inflicted upon us by the state. So I am I call it like an evangelical personality. So when I do something, I kind of want to bring everyone with me and tell everyone about it. And I just thought, if I can get enough people on board, then, at the end of the day, hopefully we can actually do something from inside the tent. So it's a little bit of a goal to kind of not infiltrate, but just to actually have a voice and have a say. I had no idea how the political system even worked. I didn't even know that your average person on the street could join a political party. I hadn't even thought of that. And so once I recognised that actually there's about 200 people in that building in Canberra making policy decisions. I don't know the exact number, but, ultimately, I don't even know how it all works.
225, I think.
Yes, thank you. So, 225. And it comes from the bottom up. So I thought, all right, well, I'll just join locally and I'll start agitating and I'll start being a bit of a thorn in the side. And so that was actually my goal, and I had success, and I had success at doing it. I wasn't trying to take over. It's, for me, politics is all about, it's all about power plays for most people. It's about power, but I was very authentic and genuine in my motives. It was purely about looking after not just my kids, because ultimately I can look after my kids and we can indoctrinate them the other way, but I was concerned for our society. So what happened? Yeah.
Let's delve into the issue. Not so much the Safe Schools program, because a lot's been said about that. A lot's been said by yourself. A lot's been said by myself, and many others on Safe Schools and why that was such an affront. But the fundamental issue that I see here really is the issue that you've just raised and what you've said. Parents having the right to determine what things their children may learn when it comes to sexuality. I mean, that is not something historically that has been really in children's faces in schools. It has been left up to parents, and for very good reason, because it pertains to values. And families form values. Schools can add to that, but ultimately families are the arbiter. They're also the procreator of values, I guess, sending them down in generations. It was interesting, Marijke. I had almost a debate. It was supposed to be an interview, but it turned into a debate with an ABC journalist, surprise, about this issue. And, it was put to me, well, what if there was a homophobic parent or a bigoted parent? Should they be able to get away with passing their values on to their children? And I said, well, hang a second. I'm going to turn this around. Is it the ABC's view or your view that parents should not be allowed to pass values on to their children? Like, that's what we're talking about here. Are we really going to have government and government institutions step into that space where we're going to regulate what parents can and can't say to their kids? And look, I'm sorry to bang on and on about this. I'm going to let you talk in a minute.
No. I love it, George. You're one of my heroes. Go for it.
Well, same. It's a mutual admiration society. But if you want to talk about the direction or where this is all going to head to, have a look in Scotland. The Scottish National Party, which is anything but a nationalist party, it's a socialist party in extremis, actually. So the Scottish National Party introduced laws over there. I'm not sure whether you're aware of this, Marijke, but they introduced laws over there which introduced introduced the guardian of children. So it was this title, the child's guardian or the guardian of children. What it was a child could select a person from particular groups of people. It could be public servants, teachers, a particular classification of people. You had to be in a specific profession, and there would be some legal status ascribed to that person. So that person could essentially be the circuit breaker if there was an argument between mum and dad and the kids. The kids could appeal to the third party that would basically give a call either way, whether the decision should be what the kid wants or the decision should be what the parent wants. And it was actually mums like yourself in Scotland that became aware of this issue stepped up to the fore and said, no way, we are not going to have, quasi-bureaucrats in control of what goes on in our families.
Yeah.
And they actually stopped it. They stopped it through legal action, mind you. They stopped it through legal action. So that, to me, actually, we can go into the intricacies of safe schools, but at the end of the day, what this whole thing is about is diminishing the role of parents, mums and dads, from having authority over children. And I felt very concerned about that. How far do you think that the push for this safe schools program and everything else that's akin to it goes towards undermining the authority of parents in families?
Yeah, well, you've spoken exactly to the point. I mean, when I first did, the first viral video, I was talking about this little program in schools. And for me, it's been a real journey to piece it all together. And the real question is, who owns the children, right? And that's the real battle that I see, which you've spoken to. So, it became so much more apparent through policy, this push for the state to become the parent and to emancipate children through, all snuck through behind quiet doors. And so no one knows. They're not putting it out on the media, or, they're not giving you this information. But if you look at the policy, so, for example, our Doctors in Schools program with over 100 operating school, doctors' clinics, and most parents are still unaware. That's already happening here in Victoria, where doctors are there and children have been emancipated from the Medicare. Now, I believe it's 14, but I actually received a letter from my 12-year-old asking for her bank account details. I've started that follow-up process, but that's quite frightening. So it's a bigger picture. It's who owns the children. And if we don't, as mums and dads, step up and claim our children, it's quite frightening where this is all heading. And that's ultimately exactly what you said. It's not actually about, they can put in all kinds of different programs, and they do that. But the bigger picture is actually who owns the children. And I believe that that's their mother and father. And, there are instances, of course, where children do need to be rescued from certain situations, and that's part of the picture. But in terms of what's going on, I was one of the first voices early on. I didn't even really know what it was, but I was learning about this cultural Marxism, and it's undeniable. Like, every institution is being threatened and attacked, and it's a restructure and a real takedown of Western civilization. And it's fascinating, and it's coming in all areas and all aspects. But for me, it's the biggest battle we have, and mums and dads really, really do need to push back. And we've seen it. We've seen a lot of pushback, and there are some good things happening, but it's far more ingrained than I realised initially.
You're listening to Conservative Wine.
So you mentioned just then about, some situations where children may need to be removed from the family unit for safety reasons, of course. I get concerned. So I mean, I absolutely agree, but I do get concerned about how far the envelope is pushed in that realm as well. I've heard of foster parents who have been denied their role as foster parents, and they have had foster children removed from them because of their Christian beliefs, because they are conservative Christians. And the state has decided that that is not a healthy way in which those children should be brought up, a healthy institution in which the children should be brought up, where they're subject to biblical ethical teachings. So it's a short step from there to saying, well, actually, a situation in which biblical ethical teachings are being put on your own kids is also an issue of child safety. And I have heard some, I don't have any specific tales to regale, but I have heard some alarming sort of stories about that happening around the nation. What
There's a
have you
case
heard
in
in that
WA.
regard?
Yeah, there's a case in WA where foster parents were denied based on, to be foster parents based on their Christian worldview, and everything that they answered on the question. I mean, this is, I think, an issue that the Australian Christian lobby have taken on really, really well. But they were queried and questioned and ultimately denied placement, as and they were, all reports, just an amazing family. So you're right. Christians are, and Christianity and Christian values are definitely being demonized. And what concerned me was, once I kind of looked into the Respect for Relationships program as well, which is another program that goes hand in hand with Safe Schools, I could see that there was a potential for this to be weaponized again, in that way, in that people with certain views, suddenly views in relationships that aren't respectful become a form of violence, and that's kind of the undertone. Yeah. And I could kind of see where they were heading. From my point of view, that was something I'm on the lookout for, because we've got to keep our guard up, because there's certainly this war on our children.
Mm-hmm. And it is a war on our children, without a doubt. And the people who are behind some of these programs make no bones about where they're coming from. Obviously, Ros Ward from the Safe Schools Coalition made no bones about the fact that the program, as far as she's concerned, was an instrument of Marxism and ensuring that Marxist influence got there into the schools and obviously into the children. So that's quite alarming in itself. And, they bragged about, people from the Safe Schools Coalition bragged about the fact that parents had no right to override that program. And I find similar things go on with similar types of programs. I want to move on from there, though, Marijke. You, look, today, or this week, I should say, we found that Coon Cheese has been cancelled, even though it was named after the fellow that pioneered the process, Edward Coon, of making cheese. That it's been deemed racism, so we've solved racism by banning Coon Cheese or cancelling Coon Cheese. But this cancel culture is just so insane these days. But it's examples like this show it to be insane, whether it's Coon Cheese or whether it's Redskin lollies or Chico lollies or whatever. It's just dumb sort of stuff. But it's also insidious. And there was a massive pile on you. I noticed the media reporting when you were known as political Posting Mumma, where you were just getting slammed in the media. As I referred to the allegations before that you were really some political operative that was pretending to be an average mother, and then there was obviously a court case that cost you a lot, no doubt mentally, emotionally, and financially. But all of this pile on, to me, that must have had a great impact that probably made you think, is it worth it? You're back now. You're back. You've gone away for a while, obviously, to take stock, but you're back now.
Yep.
When you've had all of that attack, what has made you come back? What has made you think, well, this is worth it?
Yeah, look, I've actually been diagnosed with some PTSD from the experiences, what happened to me. At the time, I was in fight or flight. Turned out I'm a fighter. I was literally mobbed. I was sent, gay porn. There was threats on my children, very, very sexual in nature, very violent, very vicious. And by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and they'd get you on every platform and every possible way. I had my home address was I was doxxed, so I was put on a public website of 25,000 people, and they were, you know, threatening to turn up to my home, and it was huge. And you know, at the time, I really was running on adrenaline. And
I just want to pause there for a second, and we'll get to the point what made you what's made you come back into the fight. But that what you've just relayed there is absolutely and utterly atrocious. This is one of the big things that I really despise the left for. They go on so much about their values, about anti-bullying, about tolerance, and about all the rest of it. But when they disagree with someone, when someone's putting stuff out there and is putting it out there in a way that's popular, they basically resort to an anything goes to shut this person down, to shut them up, because what they're saying is against what we believe. And I just find that disgraceful. The fact that you were vilified, victimized, you were doxxed, you had hate mail, you had illegal emails if there was porn that was being sent to you. Marijke, that was absolutely terrible. I'm sorry that you went through that, but what it does expose is the absolute and utter hypocrisy of the left in attacking you, a woman like that. And I just felt I needed to say that. So
thank you.
The point is, you're back. You're swinging again. That's great.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, you know, I did need to definitely take a break and take restock of, you know, what was going on, and you know, very, very interesting in terms of when we talk about the left. So it came to my attention that actually who I thought were members of the Greens Party and even the Labor Party, and that had kind of mainly teamed up against me. A lot of them were actually members of the Liberal Party here in Victoria. So we've had a infiltration of very, very aggressive lefties, and they were very threatened by me. I didn't know that at the time. But, you know, that's, I guess, once again, why it's so important for good people to consider getting involved and just, you know, having a vote and taking a stand. But why am I back? Ultimately,
these people in the Liberal Party, the dreaded black hand, are they?
Yeah. And you can see it. I mean, you know, we need a strong opposition in Victoria. We need that, and you know, we've got some fighters down here, but ultimately, it's pretty messy. And then you've got, you know, agitators as well, white-handing the good guys on the other side. But anyway, that's the internal stuff. But I think it's important. I think it's actually important that people know, because most people go, "Oh, I'm not getting involved." Good people. And I understand why, because it's pretty brutal. But at the end of the day, you know, who's governing us? You know, these are the kind of people that you know, are making these policies and supporting it. And you do need opposition from within the tent. So, but for me personally, the partisan politics stuff is not for me. Actually, I've come to realise there's a much bigger picture going on. For me, it is a spiritual battle. It's actually not so much about even left and right from a partisan point of view. It's about good and evil. And so I started ultimately because one of the main issues is I'm actually pro-life. And so that was actually my very first post was about you know, abortion, which was a topic that, you know, in Victoria we have full-term abortion. And just horrific laws, which most people don't know. Even the people that may call themselves pro-choice may not be aware of just how brutal, you know, the laws are here. But that was my first kind of thing. And then ultimately, I guess as a stay-at-home mum, I actually, you know, I completed high school. I didn't finish my first degree, but I did quite well academically. But I really, 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 from when I had a bit of a change of heart, I just, and because I guess my own background influenced my decisions, I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mum. And in the, you know, generation I've grown up in, it's incredibly countercultural. But there are so many of us out there, but we just don't get represented by the media. We don't get, we're in our homes, we're doing the work, and it's an incredibly important role in our society that's just been, so degraded, and they pretend we're insignificant, and I think that's because we're very significant, and I respect choice, and I think everyone should have that choice. But for me, I've worked on and off a little bit part-time, but ultimately I want my kids to have a soft place to fall, and I wanted to create a nest, and I wanted to create an environment for my children so that they could flourish, and they're the true weapons that I'm going to send out into the world. And so I wanted to I just wanted to speak out against the what I call and what is deemed now the feminazi movement, which is this wave of feminism that's just so aggressive and has turned itself on its head, where we're at a point where you can only choose if you choose a certain way of living, the career, or you're willing to put your kids into childcare from the cradle, and that choice is not really there anymore, and we're not encouraged. And so that was my initial reason for getting involved and actually putting a political posting up. It was a combination of things, but ultimately I wanted to speak out against what I see as a very, very aggressive movement. I don't think there's been a more aggressive movement than the feminist movement with the attack on family, because ultimately when you take the mums out of the homes and you demonise the fathers, because fathers are absolutely crucial, and you can see how they've successfully achieved a lot of their goals. So, yeah, that's ultimately. And so I just actually want to get back to sometimes you can get so bogged down, and this is what happened to me, so bogged down in the scrum and kind of fighting in this turf, that's just, it's politics, it's brutal, that you can kind of lose your light and lose the joy. And for me, that happened, and I became a bit of a shadow of myself. And ultimately, I think we need positivity. I think we need hope. I think we need good values. I think we need messages to mums out there and dads out there that you're worth it. You're worthy, and you're important, and you are needed. And I think you mentioned when we did our Good Source launch, George, that you think Western civilization's gone. And I was probably being a little positive in saying, we've got to try and recapture what we can. I probably think you're right. I gave that a lot of thought, and I thought, yeah, it's we know how the story ends ultimately, but basically, now is the time to really turn to our families and to strengthen our families and to put that back together, because it is the most important organisation on the earth. And so that's ultimately what I want to speak to in the culture.
Now, you've just mentioned the Good Source. This is one of the main platforms that you're going to be promoting this entire worldview that you're putting forward for women, and that's available at goodsource.news, as is this podcast, by the way, and this the show Conservative One. So that's a great thing. You also going to be stepping up the game back on Facebook, or are you just going to be going through the Good Source platform?
Look, to be honest, I think Facebook's almost had its days. I've had a love-hate relationship with it, but it's really interesting. They shut down, and you'd know this too, George. They shut down conservative voices, and they're really, it's actually their base. That I just saw something actually this week that the top 10 conservative platforms on Facebook top 10 were all conservative. your Ben Shapiro's, and it listed them. You may have seen it. But ironically, they're the ones they want to shut down. So, they shadow ban us, and also the laws and policies. So it's a really dangerous space. I was spending way too much time, when you are responsible, not for just what you say, but for what other people say. on your platform. I mean, at the end of the day, Facebook could be responsible, or the person that says it, but they can come after, the person who runs the page. It's just too dangerous. And I was spending too much time. So my goal, I don't know, I want my Facebook peeps to come along to the good source with us. I hope they do. And I'm also on Parler. I've just jumped on there. So are you on Parler?
Yep. Yeah. I am on Parler. Yep.
So I think we're going to have to take our custom elsewhere and really, go there in droves. And Facebook's been great for the mums. It's just a really, they've mastered the platform, but I think it's had its day.
I have the love-hate relationship with Facebook too. I think they do it better, much, much better than Twitter. Twitter is an absolute cesspit. I'm off it. I've never been happier in my life being off it. But it is now completely and utterly rolled up in this cancel culture. Facebook has, to a degree, tried to withstand some of that, but eventually they won't withstand it. And you see some signs coming in on that. I've never had any post taken down. I've had some with some fake fact checking on it. I've never been banned or sin binned for a few days, but I'm sure if I wasn't a member of Parliament, that may have happened. Okay. But look, Marijke, I think that all that you've been through, all that you've done, and the fact that you're back, as I said, punching on, it's very important. You mentioned before my view that's somewhat pessimistic about the trajectory of Western civilization and what I would call the last vestiges of the Christian social order in our society. That may be true. There is a saying, and this is quite blokey, I'm sorry, but a saying in a book that I recently read by Marcus Aurelius, who is a Roman emperor, the paragon of Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism. And I'm not going to repeat it verbatim, but the saying almost has become like just this eye-opening sort of life motto for me, that at some point you'll have to recognize the world in which you live in and the power that controls it, the source from which you spring, and that the fact that there is a limit to the time assigned to you, and if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone, never to return. And I think that while we might know that there is something wrong about the world in which we live in, that the trajectory is not so good, we also know the source from which we spring, which is goodness, because it's God. And there's a limit to our time. And I guess at the end of that, we can either say we fought on for the source, or we acquiesced. And I've decided, like you, that I don't want to be one of those people that says that I just rolled over. I'll take a rest when I need it, and I think that's important. But absolutely, it's fighting the good fight and defending the freedom and what I believe to be the kingdom of God, and that's worth it, And I've gone this far. May as well keep going. Very much so. Well, more power to you. God bless. Thank you very much for joining us for this podcast of Conservative One, Defending Traditions and Freedoms. Great to be with you, Marijke Rancie.
Thank you so much, George. It's been an honour.
We will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
You've been listening to the Conservative One podcast with George Christensen.